If you like this video, make sure to visit our Vimeo page and follow us to get the latest update.
As I said in the previous session, there are various flavors or different versions of ERP system of SAP. So we have gone through about that in the previous session. I'll just very quickly, in brief, do a recap of what we did during our last session. Okay, in case if you guys find it's too fast or you have any queries, please feel free to stop me anytime and ask any questions. Okay, shall we start now?
Okay,
good, perfect. So first thing what we learned in the previous session was we have gone through about the details of SAP ERP system. We have seen that typically ERP system is used to manage the business operations of a big large scale enterprise. And as you know, a large scale enterprise would have different departments or different business areas. And to address the requirements of those different departments or different business areas, we have a one-stop integrated solution by SAP, that is SAP ERP, SAP ECC, or SAP R3. And the latest version of the same software is now SAP S/4HANA. Okay, we will also go through in future, like, what is HANA, why it is called HANA, and what do you mean by S4, and so on. Now, with regards to the SAP ERP system, as I said in the previous session, the businesses or the big large scale enterprises are divided into various departments or business areas. These are also called as functional areas, and in SAP world they are also called as functional modules. And those who work on configuring those requirements related to a function module in SAP terminology, these folks are called as functional consultants. Okay, then we also have something called as technical consultant, wherein people work on the technical aspects of the system. Okay, so few of the examples of functional areas are like SD, MM, PP, PM. And if we divide them into three major subsections, here we would see that in the bottom part of the slide, ERP is basically classified into three broad. As I was saying, the reason, okay, you might be wondering, like, why I am talking about all these things. Why don't we just simply start with BW? These are actually related to BW itself. So all these things, whatever topic I am covering off, in which I have covered in the previous session, which I will be covering in our next subsequent sessions, everything is relevant. Actually, we are in fact going in more detail than the curriculum which is scheduled by prepared by ZaranTech. So why we need this is, majority of the times, as I said, we end up extracting the data from this system. This is really vital system. So one of the, I would say, widely used system by BW folks is SAP ERP system. Now, as I said, for SAP ERP system, say if you have gone to a client wherein SAP ERP, they are on the older version of ERP, you could see something called as SAP R3 or 4.6B, 4.5B, or 4.7, or whatever it is. Okay, the very few customers are still there on the actual R3 version of SAP. Very few. Majority of them, they have moved to ECC. ECC was the next version of SAP software after 4.7. So you might see that in ECC, then we have also enhancement specs. EHP from 1 to 8. I think 8 was the one which was the, if I'm not sure, if I'm not wrong, probably 8 was the one which was the last. EHP stands for enhancement pack. So what they did is, in ECC, they changed the versioning. So instead of saying ECC 5, ECC 6, ECC 7, they started with ECC 5 actually. Then after 5, they move on to ECC 6. Then within ECC 6, after they moved to ECC 6 with the naming convention, they did not go for ECC 7. What they did is within ECC, they started with EHP, Enhancement Pack. Okay, Enhancement Pack 1, 2, 3, 4, so on. So in that way, the successive versioning of the software was done. Okay, so EHP stands for Enhancement Pack. So I believe 8 was the last, and then from there they moved on to S4HANA 1.0, and I think the current one is 2.0, comma 2.0. Okay, and within 2.0, it's not 2.0. In fact, HANA is a 2.0. They have a different naming convention. It is not 1.0 or 2.0. Apologies. HANA database itself is 1.0 or database itself is 2.0. But within S4, they started with, I think, 1609 onwards. So how did they did? You might be wondering, like, all of a sudden, instead of 1, 2, 3, why did this name, or from where did this number 1609 has come? So when you go and work on a project, you would see that the client is on a version of S4HANA 1609 or 1709, 1710. This is difficult to remember. So there is a logic. So then probably 1809. So what is happening is the first 2 digits represent the year, and next 2 is the month. 16 is 2016. 09 was released in 2016 September. 17 2017 October. 2018 September. Likewise, they started releasing the software depending on the month they released it and the year. They started giving the naming convention. I'm not sure what exactly is the this year's version going to be launched, 21, or the previous one was, I believe, 2010. Okay, so these are the different naming conventions with regards to S4HANA versioning. So you might be asked to extract data from any of these ERP systems. Now, irrespective of whether you are on HANA database or non-HANA database, whatever it is, you still have 3 major subsections of the software in the ERP segment. One is finance, another one is logistics, third one is HR. So we might be able to work on any one of them.
I'm sorry, Ian.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I just wanted to just fast track a little bit. Not fast track, sorry, fast track backward. Now, with you are talking about the years that the SAP for HANA was released. It says 16th September. So which year, or it's just the month and the day? It doesn't add the year.
No. I think you missed the point. The first 2 characters denote the year, and next to the month. It doesn't give the exact date.
Oh, okay. Okay, not the exact day. Okay, year and the month. Okay.
So it gives the year and month.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Okay.
So in this way, they change the sequencing of versioning of the software. Okay. But whereas for the BW, they did not. For BW, it is BW for HANA and BW for HANA 1.0, BW for HANA 2.0. So we will be working BW for HANA 2.0 on this version. We will be working. Okay. They did not give the naming convention year wise. And one thing I will tell you, like having worked with SAP for so long, I would tell you one thing which they are very poor at is giving the names, versioning of the software. They have changed, in fact, BW to at least 7-8 times in last 20 years. So it was BW, BIW, then it became BW, then it became BI, then it became BW, then BW on HANA, then BW for HANA. So this is how they keep on confusing people. And other thing, I have also worked with SAP as a company itself. Like, I was not on the direct payroll, but I was working on a contract through someone else for them. What I have learned while working for SAP themselves was that for each of the product, they have a product manager who would try to sell his product. He would try to bring changes to his product, and then keep his job safe and secure. Now what happens is, sometimes you would see that within SAP there is competition among various products of SAP itself. So you would see that, okay, when you go to the reporting space, there is another tool of SAP called as business objects. Within business objects, you have Webby, you have then Lumira, you have these days something called as SAP Analytics Cloud. Now, if you see among all these three tools, there are, I would say, maybe functionality wise and features wise, 60-70% of features are common. There is a lot of resemblance in the functionality the tool can operate. But because these tools are different products within SAP and managed by a different product manager, there is kind of internal competition going on within SAP itself. And you would see that, okay, something which is there, you can also do using something else. Now, why I'm saying this is, when you work on SAP, you would see that the roadmap of SAP is not clear. This is one thing which is very, lacking with SAP, is that they themselves don't have a proper 5-year roadmap that, okay, after 5 years, we would like to switch from this to this, this to this. They may have something for the time being that, okay, in the future, in next 2 years, 3 years, we will bring something like this. But all of a sudden, if they find something else, they will just simply switch the roadmap to something else. So you can't trust and rely that, okay, what I am thinking or that I will get after 2 years or 3 years, it might not be true. So these are few things which you will learn over a period of time when you start working with SAP. But for us as a BW folk, we have to also familiarize ourselves with other products of SAP. So I have said that these are few of the products of SAP. Now, having said this, again, I don't want to confuse you too much, but for the sake of knowledge, I have to teach you about this. And the thing which I want to show you is, okay. So far, we have been talking only about ERP. So apart from ERP, there are other tools of SAP as well. Okay. SAP different softwares. Okay. Primarily, the primarily used software is ERP, but apart from ERP, we used to have, these are changed now. We used to have something called as SRM, CRM, and so on. But these days, majority of the softwares are cloud-based. So forget about SRM and CRM. Okay, forget about these old systems. They are very rarely seen these days. Now, the other applications of SAP, which we see commonly used in the market, is something called as success factors. So basically, success factors is SAP's HR system, which is hosted on cloud. If you're not familiar what is cloud, I will explain what is cloud in the subsequent slide. So it is HR system on cloud. Likewise, we have Ariba. Ariba is again SAP procurement system on cloud. So I don't want to get into the details of all these things, but you might come across something called as Concur, Hybris, obviously SSE, and then data warehousing on cloud. and so on. So you would see lots of systems, even business objects on cloud is there these days. So you would come across lots of other tools or applications which are owned by SAP, which you might use in your practical real-time life. Okay, let's move on. Obviously, here we missed was, we will also go through in detail about BW. So but for the timing, just remember that we will be doing BW on HANA 2.0 version. Okay, this is something we will learn in our course. As I said, we have functional areas, SDMM, and so on, and we have different skill sets: functional consultants, technical consultants, basis who manage the SAP system. He's the administrator. He manages the SAP system installations and other maintenance and upgrade related tasks. Okay. Then SAP security manages user authorizations and user access. Security manages what? Manages user authorizations and user access. With regards to security, we have other systems which you might come across: identity management, IDM, and GRC. Okay, governance, risk, and compliance. So these are the other two systems which you might come across while working on SAP software. Okay, so these are the few things which we need to be familiar with. Then, okay, I think I added this slide. I'm not sure whether I showed it or not, but this is something which I added later. But it's I will share it. It's, I don't want to get into the depth of it. We will deviate it if we go too much. So these are the trends. And we will also go through the definition of data warehousing and data warehousing on cloud in the subsequent slides. But we know that by now we are familiar that majority of the task of any enterprise to manage their business operations is maintained via SAP ERP system. And there are various flavors to it. This is what we learned in a nutshell. Okay, so we also learned about the evolution of SAP. Again, I don't want to get into it in detail. Okay, limitations, R3 reports we'll go through when we come up, when we do the comparison between R3 and BW. We'll go through about that slide again. Now, one important thing which I wanted to explain in detail in the previous session was the three-tier architecture. You might be wondering why I'm emphasizing so much on three-tier architecture. What exactly do we have to do as a BW expert or SME with regards to three-tier architecture? See, the way SAP is designed is that it needs three different layers of systems to manage its business operations. Okay, so the bottommost layer of the system is a database system. It's a separate server. The way it is treated as a three-tier was that it is a separate server. It requires, say that to perform a task. Are you guys familiar with networking? Do you know any basic idea about how the network works on a LAN, local area network, or if you're working for any enterprise? How does your enterprise login access, Active Directory access work? Any clue? Just basic. Do you know what is client server architecture?
No. Client server architecture? No, I don't know.
So I will tell you like what. Okay, that doesn't matter if you don't know. Not an issue. I will explain you. See, typically what happens is when you work in an organization. Do you guys work for any organization like a company wherein you access through your user ID and password and log into the company's network?
No, where I work, we don't use we use computers, yes, to check, but we don't go into the network system like what you are talking
No,
about.
you don't
Because
have to. What I'm saying here is, when you log into your computer, you might be
mm,
prompted for user ID and password. You might have your own enterprise ID,
y-
and then you
yeah,
need to enter
yeah,
your password, right?
yeah,
So the
yeah.
machine which you use, correct. So the machine which you use to access your enterprise ID, to log into your company's network, either your personal laptop or company's laptop, or
Mm,
if a desktop machine in the company, whatever machine you use, that machine is called as a client. Okay. So if there are
okay.
5 employees, all five of them might have different machines through which they will access the same network. If there are 100 employees in the organization, all 100 of
Mm-hmm,
them will access using different systems, but they will access the
mm,
same network. So within the network, you can talk to each other, you can chat using any chatting software or Microsoft Teams or
yeah.
whatever it is you can use to chat and communicate with your colleagues.
Mm-hmm,
What I'm trying to say here is, all these systems which you guys use are clients, whereas there is a master. Okay, your systems are called a slave. There is a master system that is called as a server. Okay, so the server is the main system which is there somewhere in some data center. Okay, so
mm-hmm,
that server, there is someone who will manage and operate that server. There is a network team, there is an infrastructure team who will manage the access of all these employees, user credentials, security, cyber security, whatever, whatnot. Everything is managed. There's a big job happening behind the scene which you and I will not usually know. Okay, but to keep it short, there is something called as a big system, there is a small system. The big system is a server where the entire information is there. That server will control and govern the access of all the small systems.
mm-hmm.
Okay, these are clients. So it's called as two-tier architecture. In two-tier architecture, there is one master system and one slave system. Whereas in SAP, they have added one more layer to its architecture, that is called as three-tier system. Within SAP server, there are three different layers. So one is used to just store the data. It's a database system. The other one is used to write the business logic. It's an application layer. You can write the you know logic to change some functionality of the software, and that logic can be written using your SAP proprietary language called as ABAP. Okay, I will give you a very simple example now. Maybe it would make your life easy. This would be very helpful. This is something, it would take a lot of times for someone to understand. If just by reading books, it's very difficult. Unless you have that practical experience, you will not get it. But anyways, I'm trying to simplify and make it simple. If you don't follow in this session, don't worry. Over a period of time, you will learn. Okay, what I'm trying to say is just the science and logic behind this three-tier architecture. Okay, if you are able to grasp it, it is well and good. If you are not, then just leave it aside. Over a period of time, you will learn it again. Okay, now it's slightly tricky and complicated. What happens is, okay, we will take this also out from the scene. We don't have to worry about it too much. Okay, I'll take the shapes. It's easy to do this way. When you access the system, we have something called as presentation server. Presentation server is nothing but, it's your machine or local machine from where you access as a client, as a user, end user. Okay, we are end user. No, we are developers. Actually, you and me, we are actually SAP developers, whereas end user is someone who is a business user who will access it. So either end user or developers, they develop, okay, SAP developer. So we access SAP system using a presentation server or presentation layer. Okay. Now this presentation layer, till maybe advent of S4 HANA, we needed something called as a thick client to access SAP. That used to be called as SAP GUI software. Okay, is a physical software. You will learn it. I mean, it's like when we actually access the system, I will also show you how the GUI looks like. Okay, so we need an additional dedicated application to be installed on our machine to access SAP. That application or software is called as SAP GUI. Okay, this is what is SAP GUI. It is a software or application. We always used to use SAP GUI to access it. So the issue with the presentation server was, unless and until you have SAP software, which is SAP GUI on your machine, you cannot access SAP. Say you move from your city to another city, but you have some very vital information which you wanted to access. If you don't have GUI, then you can't, which means that you are handicapped, which is a big flaw. Then SAP said that, okay, that is a big drawback. SAP came up with something called as a NetWeaver client concept. Okay, I think it was around 2000 time period, where SAP said that, okay, let's move on from GUI to NetWeaver, which is browser based. So even these days, majority of the applications are browser based. Do you know what is a browser? Can you give me an example of any browser? Browser is a software which is used to access internet. What software do you use to access?
Oh, you mean the browser like the the Google? You have the Google.
Yes.
Internet
So
Explorer.
Google Chrome, correct.
Yeah, Firefox.
Firefox, Google Chrome, Edge. We used to have Netscape Navigator a long time ago, 20 years ago. Okay.
Yeah.
So these are the browsers. So now, instead of SAP GUI, the more handy software is using the internet. We just log into our Google Chrome. Through Google Chrome, we access the website and then access it. That is NetWeaver client. SAP introduced somewhere around 2000, but still that was only with a lot of limitations. Then SAP moved on to another flavor of presentation server, which is very good. These days, it is very widely used, and that software of SAP is called as Fury. Okay, again, Fury, you might have heard it. It's based on UI5. So UI5 is actually nothing but the language which is used behind a browser is HTML. So it is HTML5. It was 4.0 was the HTML flavor which was used widely, but from last maybe 5, 6 years, 7 years, HTML5 is widely used. The beauty of HTML5 is it allows you to access a web page seamlessly across any device. You can access a web page without rendering it, without needing to render it or modify it. If you want to use your mobile phone, you see the same page. If you use the laptop, you don't have to worry. If you use the iPad, you don't have to worry if you are on HTML5. But if you're on HTML4, then some developer, the pages, if you build a page in for a laptop, for a desktop, then if you access the same page on a mobile device, the page layout used to get disturbed. With the introduction of UI5, seamlessly you can see the web content across any device without needing to render it, without needing to worry about the data getting disturbed or the layout getting disturbed. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
You understand? Okay. So we are now like looking into the presentation layer concept of SAP. So in today's world, I would say, to keep it short, okay, to keep it short, for SAP customers or for SAP users, we have to, for end users, don't worry, but even for developers, for people like us, we still use GUI, Fiori, in some cases, and browser. Okay, these are the three applications or softwares we need to access SAP. Okay, that's a presentation layer. Now jump to the bottommost. For the middle one, I will come to that at a later stage. Database layer. What is a database layer? Database layer is nothing but, for SAP till the introduction of HANA database, SAP supported its software to be database independent and operating system independent. You could run SAP on any networking multi-user operating system. You could run SAP on any database. So the examples of databases which I gave in my previous session was predominantly Oracle was one of the widely used database. Then the next one was SQL Server, and very few clients, they also had DB2 and so on. These were like, commonly used databases. Okay. Now, with the introduction of HANA, SAP discarded and discouraged using any of the databases other than HANA. So if you are working on BW on HANA, the only database you can use is HANA database. What is HANA? HANA is SAP's own proprietary database. We will learn about HANA as well, the database of SAP in detail in our subsequent sessions. So now, if you are using BW for HANA, you have only one database, that is HANA database. You don't have access to use Oracle or SQL or DB2. That is what we used to have before. Okay. If you are working on BW on HANA, then also your database is HANA. So if you are working on BW for HANA, database is HANA. If you are working on BW on HANA, then also the database is
Oh,
HANA.
so sorry, Ian. I have a question. So I want to understand the difference between the BW for HANA and then the BW on HANA, because it looks as if they are different.
Yep, sure, correct. I will explain you. For the time being, I will come, because we have in-depth slides. We have separate section, so I don't want to confuse you by answering your question right now. Just for the time being, assume that it's parked aside. I'll come back to you maybe in 2 weeks, or in 1 week or 2 weeks. Maybe if time permits, we will cover that next week, or the subsequent week we will cover this topic. Okay.
Okay.
Whereas in BW 7.3 or ECC, we used to have any of these databases. Okay. So just to make it clear, I will just here HANA DBV, whereas for this we have these many databases, three up to I would say up to 7.3 or 7.5 as well, 7.3 or 7.5. Okay. So now I'll tell you, this having this option of providing this flexibility to use any of these databases was a big I would say, plus point for SAP customers, because some of the customers who were already on SQL Server database, they did not wanted to go for Oracle database. Someone who were already on DB2, they love to stay on the DB2 database, because then their data admin database DBA, the database administrator job became easy. They didn't have to hire multiple database administrators. So that was one of the biggest, I would say, selling point for SAP to sell its software, that the customer had the flexibility to use any of the databases. But with the HANA, it's a different strategy now. Everyone has to use HANA database only. Okay. Now, so the database layer, what it does is basically, if you if you try to, excuse me, yeah, if you try to correlate into layman terms, the job of the database layer is basically to store data. And in any database, if you talk about database, the data is typically stored in the form of tables. So whatever you store in the software, at the end, the way the data was going to be stored into the database is in the form of tables. What is the layout of a table? You know very well here. If I insert a table here, you understand how the table would look like. Okay. So what do you mean by this? Why I'm trying this is, the table consists of, if I ask you in simple words, how do you define a table? If you have to explain it to a 6-year-old kid, what is a table means? I would say that a table is a combination of rows and columns. Okay, this is the definition. So whatever data we store in SAP, ultimately it used to be stored in tables. So we had there was no proper number to it, but I think more than 35,000 different tables were there, standard tables in SAP. Then on top of that, SAP gave us flexibility to create our own custom tables. Then customer used to create their own tables, and then the number grew from 35,000 to 50,000 or 100,000, whatever it is, depending on the customizations they did. But SAP discourages to customize the software. They say that, okay, to keep it simple, don't do too much of customizations. Stick to standard. Do you know something? In MS Office as well, you can use VB script to add your own tab like this. Probably you might have not seen that in standard PowerPoint, or maybe in your machine you may not have this Foxit PDF. Okay, this is something, an add-on which I have added. It's a software which I've purchased, and along with that purchase, I got this add-on. Okay, likewise, you can create your own additional menus as well by customizing it. So you can customize the software to meet your own additional requirement. Assume that you need something which that particular option is not available in the standard PowerPoint. You can add your own options by writing the code, by writing the logic, by going into the developer mode of the software. You go into the developer mode, and then you can customize it. Okay, are you getting me? Likewise, SAP allows us to create custom tables as well. Okay. Now, okay, we had 3 layers. I said one is the database layer. In the database layer, the entire data set, whatever we write, was getting stored in the database, but that was stored in the form of tables. and there was a relationship between one table to another table. So that is called as foreign key and primary key concept in database terminology. If I go into more details about database, then we have something called as RDBMS, Relational Database Management System, wherein the data has to be correlated. You cannot have a table and then another table which are totally disassociated, and if they are totally disassociated, then would be difficult to it would be very difficult to build relationship between them. To have relationship between two tables, there should be at least one common field across both the tables so that it can link to the data in both the tables. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the details of database and relational database concepts, but just to give you a gist of it, imagine that the data, whatever we see in the system, is not in the form of in the database. The data doesn't get stored in the form of PPTs or Word document, but the data actually gets stored in the form of tables only. Finally, the table could have lot of content in one field, or it could have very small content, but ultimately whatever is represented is finally stored in the form of tables. Just keep that in mind in SAP. Okay, now we move on to the third layer in the aspect, which is application layer. The beauty of providing, so typically in most of the cases we have two system landscape, which is client server architecture, one server, one client, whereas here in SAP we have three system landscape, and we have presentation server, application server, and database server. The job of the application server is to allow user to customize the SAP software as per their need. And how does it work? Okay, say assume that there is one very important feature which is widely used in SAP, is that SAP was previously was having a flexibility to be used in more than 20 different languages. You can store the data in the table in any language, whatever 20 languages SAP used to support. But I think now it has increased. I don't know exactly what is the count of languages which SAP support now in the latest version. But in the olden days, SAP used to have flexibility to support more than 20 languages. Now, in one of my example, I have worked for a Chinese client wherein they stored their entire data set in Chinese language. So the application server, what it does is the job of storing data and translating that data. So what you can do is you on the same server can have data in multiple languages. You can write data in Chinese as well as English. So the data can be translated from Chinese to English, English to Chinese. It supports multilingual feature just because it has application layer in between. So that application layer does the processing, whatever is required to transform the data into its desired format. So here, the job of the application layer or application server in SAP is to allow businesses to customize the software. Okay, it will allow you to do the customization. Okay, to do this, there is a proprietary language of SAP which is used by SAP, and that language is called as ABAP, Advanced Business Application Programming Language. What it does is it uses something called as OpenSQL code to communicate, where it communicates with the respective databases. Otherwise, what used to happen if you didn't have this application layer, assume that if you are using SQL, you need to write the code in SQL language to customize it. If the database is SQL, you need to write, if database is MS SQL, Microsoft SQL, you need to write for SQL Server, you need to write the syntaxes in MS SQL format. Whereas if the database is Oracle, then you need to write the logic in SQL format. For DB2, there is a different programming language. I don't know what exactly it is. Okay. Then there is another one, Ingrace. So likewise, there are heaps of databases. For each of them, then if you didn't had this application layer, you needed to write the logic in respective language of the database. Now, having the application layer in between avoids that need for someone to learn to write data in different languages. So we write all the changes, whatever we need, customizations we need using ABAP. ABAP uses something called as OpenSQL code. Okay. Whereas if it is Oracle, then we needed to, in fact, instead of open, we need else we were required to write. I'll just write it here. Just to give you more clarity, for Oracle, we need to write in native SQL. Okay. For SQL Server, we needed to write it in MS SQL. For DB2, something else. For DB2, something else. I don't know what exactly it is. Okay. So if you write this OpenSQL code, then this will, the application server will, it is smart enough to translate the commands of OpenSQL to the respective database language. Okay. Now we are using majority of the time on HANA. HANA uses the native SQL again. Okay. So we will learn about that as well. So basically, the job of the application server is to assist someone in doing the customizations of the software as per the customer need. So this is nothing but your 3-tier architecture. Okay. Am I making sense?
Yeah.
I have gone too much in depth of it, but it's too much to digest in second or third class, second or third session. Probably you will gain insights to it at a later stage. Okay. So one of the example I've got here is, you have a client, you have application server, you have a database server, you write the code using OpenSQL. Like, so this is the code of ABAP language. Select Matner, MATK, these are the fields from Mara table into table ITAB. So you bring the data, store it into the database layer, application layer, and do all the processing in the application layer. Whereas then you have something called as a DB server. Okay. So you have a database interface. What it does is, the database interface translates the data into the respective database language, which is native SQL code, and then so on, it gets stored it in the database. Okay. This is something which is very useful feature of SAP, which is widely used. So the option of having this 3-tier architecture gives us the flexibility to use any database easily without needing for us to learn multiple languages of the associated databases. And making changes to the software customizations is easy. Application server used specialized systems. Okay, application layer is also known as kernel layer. Application programs are executed in application layer. Application serves the purpose of a communicator between a presentation layer and a database layer. Application server is where the dispatcher again, I don't want to get into it at this stage. It's one of the job within the server which distributes the workload to different work processes, which makes the job done. Okay, so it's like a job scheduler which is there as part of the server, SAP server. Okay, that is the job of the scheduler. Okay. Database server contains specialized systems. They store the data. Data can be stored in SAP data can be business data, SAP system data, SAP tables, SAP programs. Whatever you see it in SAP, everything is eventually in the form of tables. The data could be business data, it could be data about data, which is metadata or something else. We have seen what is a client in SAP. A client is a logical system within SAP. You can use one client to store data for a particular entity, or for a particular country specific data, or for a particular product line or business line. See, imagine you have two countries. You are in US, your closest neighbor I would say is Mexico. Okay, so the Mexico guys who are there, I'm not talking about Canada, reason being that they are again it's a English speaking country. Assume that you have your business operations of your client in Mexico and US. Now, okay, you want to store data in Spanish language as well as English language, but you don't want the folks who are working in US to get confused by seeing the Spanish data. So you want to use a separate client for it. So that client is nothing but your SAP instance. So within SAP, you can create multiple clients for various reasons, for various requirements. I will give you another example of a client, a very simple example of a client. I'm not sure whether you guys are familiar with it or not. So in this particular laptop, in my laptop, I have only one hard drive. Physical hard drive is only one. Okay, but if you see that where is it? Got hanged. Okay. What is this one? So basically, within one hard drive, I have within one hard drive, what do I have? I have I would say 2 partitions. So client is like a partition to the hard drive. You have one system, but when you create a client, you are creating a logical partition to the same system. Even though the entire data of both the clients gets resided in one database, but still as an interface, they act as 2 different interfaces. Likewise, you have a flexibility to create n number of clients. Typically, we segregate the client in a fashion such that we want to capture all the configurations of a system in one client and all the data of the system in another client. In this way, we segregate the content of the clients in a SAP system. Is it making sense? Hello.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can repeat it one more time, just so.
Sorry.
Can you repeat it one more time again?
Sure.
Yeah.
See, to give you a very simple example is I'll give you another example. This would be very easy. Okay. You use, I believe, Chrome, Google Chrome.
Yeah.
No, which one do you use? Firefox?
I use, most of the time I use Google Chrome. Yes.
So if you use Google Chrome, for instance, I have only one software installed on my machine, Google Chrome. Okay. I open one tab, I search about SAP. In other, I search about say Oracle. Okay. So I have only one software installed, one browser. I'm using single browser, but it is allowing me to use different tabs. I have option to use multiple tabs. So these tabs are not actually three browsers. They are part of one browser only. They are not three applications on my machine. They're single application. Okay.
Okay.
I can simultaneously use multiple tabs to perform multiple activities at a time, which are totally different, to each other. If you want, I can perform similar search on multiple tabs, or if you want, I can also perform multiple different searches or different tasks. Likewise, SAP is giving you the flexibility to use like different tabs. Okay? These tabs are nothing but clients. Is it simple now? Is it understood?
Yeah.
What is a client? Is like a logical entity. Okay. So what we do is, in typical scenario, in general, we use one instance of SAP software to store only actual client data. Another one we use for development activities. As a developer, whatever development we do in the development system, we use it for development activities. Now, when we go to the production system, the final system, we don't have usually multiple clients. We keep only single client in the production system to maintain the data authenticity, to maintain the data consistency, to maintain the data atomicity. We just use one client in the production system, whereas in the development system we use multiple clients. In the quality system we use multiple clients. Okay, we will look into what is development system and what is quality system. And one concept associated with clients is we have something called as client dependent data and client independent data. Okay, and there are so the client dependent data is something which is in simple word, the data is only reflected. Okay, I will show you again, same concept. We have, as I said, one browser, Google. So there is client dependent and client independent. Can I show you something about client dependent and client independent? So there are, within the same software, there are something which the impact of doing something is reflected only on this particular tab. For instance, if I close here, it did not disturb me or disturb the contents of other two tabs. It is as it is. But instead of this, if I just, okay, instead of this, if I just go here, okay, hello,
Yeah.
can you see my
I'm
screen?
listening. Yeah, I'm listening. So
okay, so instead of this, if I close the main window, then it has closed both the tabs. Are you getting my point? So the one which has impacted both the tabs is client independent. If you see, if you remember, the first thing I did was I closed only one tab, that was client dependent task. Likewise in SAP as well, when you perform certain activities, the impact of that activity is only on one particular client. But there are certain jobs, if you do it in one client, even though you do in a local client, it would be impacting other associated clients as well. Okay, you will learn later what is client dependent and client independent, but you have understood it now, right?
Yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. There are certain SAP standard clients delivered by SAP, typically used by basis guys for admin activities 000, 001 and 066. Okay, now we will move on to SAP landscapes. We did not see it in our previous class. We stopped here. So we will try to at least cover this in today's session. and then we will move on to, after this, we'll close this, and then we'll move on to the next topic in the next session tomorrow. Okay. So what are landscapes? Mm,
So the
okay.
arrangement of the SAP servers in the company.
Are you guys familiar with it?
No, I mean,
Okay, no problem. That's fine. See, for SAP, before I go to landscape, I will just take one slide and explain you. What happens is in SAP, okay, when you go and work in an organization, okay, your job is like a BW developer. Okay. A BW developer, if you want to, again, correlate yourself, or you know, I would say, if you want to say in our day-to-day scenario, if you want to say that, okay, what is the job of a BW developer? What is the job of a end user? Okay. So I would say, assume that you are like a car manufacturer. You are working for a company like Tesla or Toyota or whatever it is, Ford, whatever company you want. Okay. And then when you are working for a car manufacturer, you know the mechanism of the car, you know how to build the car, you know how to fix the car, you know how to repair the car. Okay. That is what you do it as part of your job. Apart from that, you also know how to drive. Majority of the mechanics, they also know how to drive the car as well. So you know how to run the application, you know how to use the application, you know also how to build the application. That is the job, we do it. Okay. So for us to do all these activities, we need a different platform. We need some additional privileges than the end user. Okay. We need additional privileges in the system to work on it than the business user or end user or our customer. Okay. End user is nothing but the end user who is typically using BW system to just use the reports for decision making. He's a decision maker and his job is to use the reports. That's it. Or sometimes they are information consumers. So in SAP terminology, or in IT terminology, they are called as information consumers. Okay. Or sometimes they are power users as well. So what they do is they work on the real-time system, they work on the real-time data, they work in the live data. So they don't want to see the dummy data, they don't want to see the story behind all the development. So when you go and buy the car, you are least interested in knowing the complete mechanism of the car, how the engine functions, how you build it, how you designed it. They are least bothered. When you go and buy the car, you are just interested in the end product. You want to see how the car would look like, how it runs. That's it. But you don't want to know what is the background behind it, how the engine works, what are the different, what are the various different channels behind the engine, or what is the mechanism, or the how the electrical wiring is done in the car. You're least interested. You don't want to even know about it. You just want to see how the car appear, how it drives, what the functions are, how the dashboard look like. These are the things which you would be interested in. So likewise, in our BW scenario as well, our end users are interested only in the end product. Our end product is to nicely build reports. So they are interested to see how the reports and KPIs and dashboards look like. So this is what we build for our end users. So they are least interested about the logic you have used, how you have built it. They are interested in how the report appearance is. Likewise, BW developer, we need to bring the data from various sources. We need to, build a data model and then build a report. Okay. To do this, we need a dedicated system for developer. Okay. Only we use it. We don't give access to end user. This is called as development system. Whatever we do this job in the development system, end user, who is the customer, they will not have access to it. Typically, they don't even know that there is a system which exists in the background. Their system, which end user uses, is a production system. What you do is, typically, you build something here, some component, assume that you build a report, and just imagine that report is in the form of a table, say a very simple table. This is your end user, this is your report, and this you build it here. Okay. Okay. So you have built something, a report here in the system, and this is something. While building it, something could happen, like your logic could get disturbed. This could get crashed or whatever. There could be several iterations to the development. But as an end user, he will see only one final product, one final report. Okay. His job is to see only one report. So what you do is, when you build the actual report, you just simply don't move from one system to another system. You also test it. You test it. You test first here in the same system. You test it. Later you also test it in the separate dedicated testing system. Why is it not getting copied? Okay. Then you push it here. So for developer, there is a dedicated system, and then you channelize it and push it from development to production system. But typically, you don't simply just copy from development and push it to production. In the cloud environment, yeah, you move the objects from development to production. But in on-premise systems, you don't have just two systems in between. There is a separate dedicated team which does the actual testing of the software, and that is nothing but a quality system in between. So the job of the quality system or quality assurance system is to test whatever developments you do it in the development system. So you just simply don't push the objects from here to here directly, but also you test it. Okay. So it's a user acceptance testing UAT system. It is also called as UAT system or quality system or test system. Typically, in the SAP system, we have three different systems in the landscape. See, don't get confused with three system architecture. Three-tier architecture is different to SAP landscape. So in SAP landscape, we have different systems for different activities or jobs. So it's a separate standalone system. BW's development server is a separate server which is used by BW developers. Okay. So we have development system, we have a testing system which is used by super users, or which is used for user acceptance testing. It is also called as a QA system, quality assurance system as well. So it is called as UAT system or QA system. Okay. Then we have production system. This is something like, typically we have 3 systems in the landscape. Sometimes some clients who are big, they give some play system just to play around rather than for the development activities. They may have another system as well in the landscape on top of it. So it is called as, I would say that here it's a sandbox. In BW world, it is called as, in SAP world, it is called as sandbox or training system. You can also call it as a, it's not training, but it's a, yeah, it is called as a sandbox system or a kind of dummy system, just to play around. Okay, play around in the sense, test something. Okay, so you can test something from here to here. So you can check the new functionalities without breaking the development system. You can do your activity in the sandbox system. And sometimes some clients also keep another system in the landscape. Okay, that is called as trading system, but don't get confused, it's very rarely you will see that. So it is called as a training system as well, or pre-prod system. Pre-prod means pre-production system. So I have worked in all the different landscapes in my career, and then from here again, are you getting me? So we do have these many systems in the landscape. Is it making sense? So these are the different types of systems we can have. Typically, each system has got its own specific function. So for the timing, forget about sandbox or training system. In general, we have 3 different types of systems for different activities. Majority of our time as a BW developer is spent in development system. We do all our developments here, then move our objects to production system. Okay, so we have something called as transport mechanism. Through a specific dedicated transport mechanism, we push the objects or copy the objects from one system to another to another. In this way, the objects are moved. So when we talk about SAP landscape, SAP has got a 3 system landscape: development server, quality server, and production server. And within development server, we have, see here, 3-tier architecture. Within quality server, we have 3-tier architecture. So this is a server itself. So one server, again within server, we have 3 different sub servers. So is it clear, or is it still unclear?
So the following up with the previous one before this. So is this part of the system that you're talking about as the one that goes under the BW development, the system that you explained? Is this a follow-up or a breakdown of the whole thing?
It is a breakdown of the whole thing. We will have in our job as a BW developer, we will have access to all the 3 systems. As a developer, we will have access to all the 3 systems. But if someone is just a customer, he will have access to only production server. He will not have access to quality or development server. But we will have privilege. We will have privilege to access development server, quality server, and production server.
Okay.
Good. So I think we will just park it aside now for today. We will go for subsequent topics tomorrow. We will get into the actual nitty-gritties of data warehouse, and then move on from there onwards. Okay.
Thank you for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to visit our Vimeo page and follow for more upcoming videos.